Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy that I will be the moderator for this event, so we'll be with you for the next 2 hours. Let me introduce myself. I'm Andrea Condotta. I'm Public Affairs and Innovation Manager of GRUBER Logistics. Well, I think that it's an amazing opportunity that we have today, since the digitalization has already offered to us a very good chance. I mean that today there are 150 people connected. There will be more coming, since we had for this meeting more than 300 people registered. That's really impressive to me. To be honest, I'm more confident with let's say direct meeting people directly face to face, shaking hands. So that's more my cup of tea. But we have to admit that having the possibility to have such a great panel of experts and to have a digital room that can have a lot of people inside with no kind of limitation, it's definitely a great thing. I see many people present that are part of our network. Thanks to everyone for participating, for joining us. But there are also a lot of people that are not part of our network. I would say partners of GRUBER Logistics. So let me introduce a little bit GRUBER Logistics, which is obviously a transport logistics company. We are a multinational company, one of the major players in Europe in transport logistics. Our approach in the market is always the same, I would say, since the very beginning of the foundation of the group in 1936. Our proposition value is to propose solutions. And digitalization is nowadays a key topic, a key tool in order to provide solution in order to make easier the life of our customers and to create a better customer experience. As I said, we operate basically in all Europe through 30 branches and through different business areas. I don't want to go in deep in all of them. Just to mention them, we work in logistics, project cargo, air and ocean, reallocation assembly, LTL, FTL intermodal, and heavy special transport. So we have a real complex system of services which are integrated among them through a control tower. A control tower which is nowadays becoming more and more a digital control tower. As I said, the company is an historical one, born in 1936. At the very beginning, our business was just to bring wood from the mountains to the hills, to the cities. That's why we still love to say we move mountains. We recall our origin. The headquarters is still in Ora, in the north of Italy, very close to the mountains. But now, obviously, we are something really different. And it's very difficult to find a clear definition of GRUBER Logistics. If I could find some words, I could say that right now we are a digital solution transport and logistic provider, which is kind of weird, but it makes a lot of sense to us. And it brings us directly to the topic of today. Why digitalization? Why we decided to organize this international event on digitalization? If before the companies and public bodies, the players of the logistics chain, were used to face this kind of topics, just working as a single player, just for themselves, now the situation is really different. We are more and more speaking about the digital cooperation, the creation of digital ecosystem among the different players. If we really want to increase our value, we cannot work just by ourselves. This is, to me, one of the main important messages for today. And among the actors, we have to say that the public players cannot work independently from the private ones, and vice versa. It means that GRUBER Logistics as a private company has obviously some interest, a clear point of view, which is mostly linked to the business-to-business relation. But if you want to really operate and improve the value of the digital cooperation, we need to work together with other actors, as I said. And it means that the connection has to be administration to administration, administration to business, business to business, as well in some cases business to customers. If we think, for example, about e-commerce. But let's go on our panels. Let's go on our speakers. As I said, the meeting will go for a couple of hours, and you will have also the opportunity to interact with them. There will be an email address to which you can write in order to pose some question to the speaker. So please write in any time. I will have a screen, and through the screen I will see the questions that you will present. I will not be able to put all the questions to share all the questions with the speakers. I will have to check also the timing. But if I have time, I will keep 1 or 2 questions for our speakers. So let's go through our agenda. Starting from the first speaker of the day. So I'm really happy that we have the presence of the European Commission here today, through the person of Astrid Schwilling. I'm not so sure about my capability to pronunciate your surname. We checked it also before, indeed. But let's say, in any case, thanks for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you here. The European Commission is managing a very important initiative, which is called DTLF, Digital Transport Logistics Forum. I have the pleasure to be a member as well of the Digital Transport Logistics Forum, which is to me the perfect way for an institution to get in contact with different players. So it's a sort of open door to different opinions to this, in order to discuss the future of transport and logistics. But I don't want to say more. Thanks again, Astrid, for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes? Okay, perfect. And good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much also for inviting me to this event. It's a real pleasure being here, even if it's only virtually today, and having the opportunity to present briefly the Commission policies on digitalization, in particular of the transport logistics sector, but also the work we do in the Digital Transport Logistics Forum, as it was briefly already introduced by Andrea. Let me just go to my presentation. Okay, should come. Well, digital transformation of the transport logistics sector, we all know there's a huge potential still to be exploited. Digitalization.
Excuse me 1 second. I think
yes?
we are not seeing your presentation at the moment. So just 1 second, so we can fix.
I'm still on the first slide.
The positive thing is that this kind of issues normally happens also in physical event. So Astrid, now we can see your presentation perfectly.
Okay, so there was a bit of a time lag, yeah. Okay. Well, as I said, digital transformation of the transport logistics sector still bears a big potential to be further exploited, as also mentioned already by Andrea. The Commission has certain policies in place. The Commission work program at the moment actually pursues 2 big blocks of policies. One is the European Green Deal, and the second is the shaping of the Europe Digital. Some may think this is a contradiction. We think this is a twin opportunity. Digitalization not being an objective in itself, but also being an enabler for many of the things we want to achieve. Having said that, I would also like to announce that we will still publish this year, at least that's the plan, a new transport strategy. So there will be a strategy on what is called sustainable and smart transport or mobility, where of course as the title says, the digitalization pillar will rather play an important role. We all know about the importance of digitalization, but I think that the business in particular has experienced even more during this year how important it is. We think that due to COVID and the crisis, there was even a much stronger appreciation of digital solutions. The demand got much higher for a number of reasons. One of it being to limit as much as possible the human contact, to be able to monitor and adjust quickly, and to reattribute sources. So basically to replan your supply chains for which you need better supply chain visibility, better access to data, more information of what is actually going on, and also the possibilities to access data and to learn about the opportunities, how you can replan your supply chains. So having said that, to in fact increase the resilience and the agility of the overall system. The EU in principle for the years, this year and also next year, plans a couple of activities, and I have listed them here. So they range from the so-called data spaces, and I will come back to that also later, which will be a framework for cross-sectoral data exchange. So this falls very much into what we are doing also in the DTLF or vice versa. There is the Digital Services Act, which is worked upon, which is about addressing the market power of the big tech firms. The high quality public data sets, this is in particular to make accessible government data for SMEs and also research environments. And there is also the Data Act to come to to enable better access, public access to and control data. And having said that, there's also the Digital Europe program, which runs from 21 to 27, where the Commission has proposed a rather impressive budget to support also the digital transformation, of course, of the whole EU economy, not only of the transport and mobility sector. In the area of the data space, you might be aware that in February this year, the Commission had published the communication on the European data strategy, which foresees a number of so-called data spaces. And there is also one foreseen in particular for mobility and transport, and that's where also DG Move will contribute with the work we are currently conducting in the DTLF. The overall purpose here is on the one hand to facilitate access and to facilitate data sharing between businesses and administration, to some extent also between businesses and businesses. Keeping in mind, of course, data sovereignty, so that you're always in control of your data, in full respect also of the data protection, but basically to unlock the potential which is there in the different sectors. So data sharing between sectors, but the Commission also thinks there is a potential for further exploiting, where it's relevant, the exchange or the data sharing between different sectors, where it's of relevance. And that might be, for example, the case of mobility and environment, or mobility and agriculture and others. What we in the Commission in the transport area are doing in particular, and Andrea was so kind to introduce it already, we set up in 2015 so-called Commission Expert Group. It's a platform of all stakeholders which are active in the logistics and supply chains. It's called the Digital Transport and Logistics Forum. It has been extended in 2018, and in fact it gathers around 120 members and observers from the industry, from the transport operation side, from the supply chain or service providers, from the IT service providers, but also member states and also associations and organizations. But the idea here was basically to create a platform to bring people together, to make them work together, or to offer a platform for exchanging and cooperating on certain issues in relation to the digital transformation of the sector. The work had been, or is still, divided in two groups. One is a subgroup, which is working on what we call the paperless transport. And this subgroup has been very active in the development or in providing support to the preparation of the proposal for the regulation on the electronic freight transport information, which in fact was adopted this summer. So this is basically, and I'll go into more detail in a second, this is basically about information flows from business to authorities. The second pillar of the so-called DTLF is working more on the aspect of data sharing in a B2B, but also B2A environment. And again, I will come back to that. Let me just, before I go more into detail of DTLF, I would just briefly outline the regulation on electronic freight transport information. The purpose here was basically to promote paperless transport. So what the regulation is doing is to, first of all, to make member states accept information or data to provided when it's provided in electronic format, also to accept it in electronic format. The economic operators, they still have the option to submit electronically or to continue in the old style. It concerns information, all cargo-related information coming from EU and national legislation. It does not concern rules as regards means of transport or the personnel. It also establishes the rules for how data should be collected, for certification of so-called service providers of so-called FT platforms. So it establishes also requirements how to set up the platforms where those data will be collected, stored, and being accessed, and also the rules for the service providers who will set up these platforms. This is, I think, not very readable, but this actually links to the current work of the DTLF because the regulation is on first step, but the regulation also anticipates a number of what we call implementation and delegated acts. So this is the actual implementation work of the regulation, which has to be in place by member states by 2024, and the actual entry into force will be in 2025. So there will be actually legislative acts still on the what we call the common data set, and as I just mentioned, on the requirements, the technical requirements for the platforms, but also for the certification of the service providers. The subgroup, and I think this is very relevant, the DTLF and the subgroup 1 did not only support the preparation of the proposal for the regulation, it will also play an important role now in the continuous work of the implementation of the regulation. So in fact, the subgroup is now organized around a couple of teams which relate to the acts to be, or the legislative acts still to be provided. So there's a group which actually looks into the data and the common data sets, a group which looks into the functional topics, and then also the technical certification implementation aspects, so also architecture and certification implementation. I'm not going into much detail here, but I think you will have access to the presentation later, and I think provides good overview of what we are doing here. So as I said, the data team will perform the preparation of what we call the European Transport Data Model. We will not reinvent the wheel. We will work based on what does exist already in terms of data models. So there's quite an intensive work been done on establishing the state of the art, and to start from, or to continue from there. We are quite advanced, well, relatively advanced in this area already, and will become more mature even next year then with the establishment of the expert groups, which will then actually consider the delegated act. The functional team is also working. Again, here we are looking, as I said already, into the common procedures and detailed rules for the authorization of the FT platform, so the technical requirements, but also for the service providers. Again, work is ongoing here. And finally, for the technical aspects, implementation and the certification, we are quite at the beginning. So it's a bit the hands-on work which is done, but what basically this picture tries to bring as a message is that, again, we will not start from the scratch, but we will very much look into ongoing initiatives. And I mean, you can see here ongoing initiatives also from all kinds of transport sectors. You see the one record from IATA, but you also see references made to the IDAS, CEF projects like FANEX or initiatives like iShare. So all this will be looked into and taken into consideration when developing the requirements here. Now I would like to move briefly to the subgroup 2, what we call the corridor freight information systems. What does it really mean? Subgroup 2 has developed a concept to facilitate data sharing, whereby the design principles are also summarized here. The key requirements are, in fact, that you will be able to register and connect only once to a network, that you have interoperability by default, and you just mentioned the most important ones, and that it's also technology independent. It's not about developing a centralized solution. Basically, it's to establish interoperability between existing platforms or data sources. So that is what we call then a federated network of platforms for data sharing. So it's not to add another platform, but to establish the interoperability between the platforms which are out there in order to provide easy access for everybody who wants not only to access and provide data, but also to expose services. And I'll come back to that. The work of the DTLF, in fact, is around around 4 building blocks, which are, in fact, the plug and play. This is basically about easy registration and connecting only once. It's also about the architecture for the federation of the network of platforms. So it's about the technical and functional interoperability of the platforms. It's also about to create a minimum level of harmonization for services, for so-called platform services, so services to be provided via the federated network. And of course, very important, as we all know, it's the creation of the trusted, safe, and secure environment. So this is all about the governance of such a network, and not only the governance, but also to look into possible business models. So key design principle, even if it's not listed here, there's trust and security, but it's again the data sovereignty, of course, so that the data providers keep the control of the data and also who gets access to that data. In fact, what we will provide, or what the DTLF hopefully will provide until the end of 2022, is first of all implementation guidelines for organizations how to use to get access to this federated network. The technical specifications for, as I mentioned, registration architecture, the governance structure. And in fact, in parallel to the DTLF, we have, in the context of the CEF program, which is the Connecting Europe Facility program, we have 2 big DTLF-related projects, which will also serve as platforms for, it's a bit of a two-way street. First of all, to also test and validate the results of the DTLF in a real case or in real use cases, and vice versa, also to substantiate in certain areas the work of the DTLF in rather technical areas. And those 2 projects are federated, and we will have a presentation later, I think from Roland. And the second project is Phoenix. Just very, very briefly, I don't want to go into too much detail here, and I'm also watching at the clock. What does it really mean? What do we have in mind here? So just to give an illustration, a federated network of platforms, in fact, could mean that you have a peer-to-peer situation where a company communicates directly to a company. You may have a single platform in between, you may have multiple platforms in between, or you may have a situation where one business communicates via a platform, via the other, and then via the platform directly to another business. And this just illustrates where we think that those building blocks come into the game. Plug and play you will need everywhere. The federation you will not necessarily need everywhere. It is not very, you have direct contact via platforms, and the services will be also relevant for some of these platforms or some of these levels of exchanges. I don't think I will go much into detail here. I think the time is running also. This is just more or less a summary of what I said. So plug and play is really to enable companies to integrate their back office systems with the network and with the selected platform services. So to be able to share data, but also to be able to expose business services or value proposition from their own perspective. The team 2, as I said, will develop this minimum level of harmonized services, taking or build actually on real business scenarios and business transactions. So to agree what type of information of data do you need for certain type of services, so that there is a minimum understanding of that. The architecture, the federation as such, will look into the technical and functional protocols, how to establish interoperability at technical and functional level. And finally, as mentioned earlier, it's the governance and the business models. Now I'm going, one more. This just summarizes briefly the timeline for the work of the subgroup 2 in DTLF. I'm not going to reiterate all the elements here. Some of the technical papers are there, but the plan is in fact to have some kind of interim report somewhere first quarter of next year, preferably, and then to have a final report towards in the year 2020, towards the end of 2020. Now I'm going to repeat what I had already earlier. I think really important is to see that the work on the electronic freight transfer information, as well as the work on the federated network of platforms, will be certainly a source of inspiration, a source of input to the work we are conducting, or we will conduct throughout the next year on the mobility data space, amongst others. But certainly those two pillars will contribute here. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. There are sources of information. We are having a website which is actually currently updated. All presentations and minutes can be found on the expert group register of the DTLF. And didn't put it yet, very soon we will also release at large scale 2 videos which again summarize the work we are doing. And thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Astrid, for your speech. That's very interesting. I think that we are getting used to use some words that before were not even mentioned in our sector. We are getting used to speak about automation, predictive systems, data sharing, paperless transport, a lot of different things that just a few years ago were not even mentioned in our common way of speaking together. We have just, I would say, 30 seconds for a question. Let me pick up one of them. I would ask just to you, during the discussion of the DTLF, I also participated, as I said, along these last 2 years, I guess, during the second mandate. And there's a very strong debate in some topics. What's it, in your opinion, the most relevant one? The most, I would say, the topic that raised the strongest debate among the players of the DTLF?
It's not so easy to answer to that question. I would say also it's not so easy because when you look at the work of the DTLF, in fact, and the 2 angles of it, they are quite different in maturity. So, I mean, the FT, the electronic freight transport information, basically you have a legislation in place. So there is clearly the need for implementation. So the work plan is rather confined, rather concise. So it's clear what has to be done there. While the second and the federated network of platforms, the data sharing aspect is it's still, I think, a bit more future driven. I think we discussed their issues, which we have discussed for a long time in logistics already, like architecture, like semantics, ontologies, and which are still subject to discussion. And actually, we're going to have also a specific small-scale workshop, not open workshop, next week to in particular address semantics. Yeah, I think these are the basic, but they are also common to both subgroups and even beyond subgroups, because these are also aspects which we know are taken up in the projects, not only the CEF projects we have, but also in other projects in which we support, for example, via Horizon 2020, or which we may support in the future. And this is actually also one of the reasons why we have set up the DTLF, because we had a lot of work ongoing for many years, supported financially also, but not necessarily seen the large scale take up. And that's why, in fact, we established also the DTLF to come to a common agreement on some of these issues I just mentioned, like architecture, semantics, ontologies, and these issues. So to really provide the ground for pushing it a step further and to have a larger scale take up and implementation.
That's
I hope this answered your question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, and thank you also for stay with us and for your speech.